Professional wrestling is known for its intense on-screen rivalries. However, sometimes the biggest beefs actually happen backstage. But just like with their on-screen counterparts, real-life heat too sometimes does get to fade, as reconciliation is always possible. And that just so happens to be the topic of this episode. Because today, thank you to all my amazing Patreon supporters like Caleb Robinson, Jeff Ang, and Rick Rack. Thank you all so much, and if you want to become a Patreon member yourself, then go over and check out my Patreon page, as I really do appreciate all the help. After Lita had an affair with Edge while still dating Matt Hardy, Edge and Matt didn't get along to say the least. However, despite that, WWE saw dollar signs with this real-life tension and decided to make it an on-screen feud. So, despite the very warranted animosity, both men decided to work together in order to make some money and advance their careers and to be professionals. Years later, with both men now married with children, the whole Lita incident is clearly behind them, as Matt and his brother Jeff have both appeared on the Edge and Christian podcast, as well as appearing together on Table for Three. After the events of the Montreal Screwjob and Bret leaving for WCW, a lot of fans were pretty sure that they would never ever see the Hitman go back to a WWE ring. But after suffering from a medical incident, Bret said that he realized that life is just too short to hold on to grudges. And so, in January of 2010, Bret Hart would once again set foot in a WWE ring on an episode of Monday Night Raw. And you know, he might have reconciled with someone else too that day, but it's not important. After all the controversy surrounding the infamous steroid trials and Hulk Hogan leaving for WCW and starting the Monday Night Wars, many thought that Vince McMahon would forever hold a grudge against his former megastar. However, that ended up not being the case at all, with McMahon still having the Hulkster make appearances on WWE TV, even though he may not be everybody's favorite anymore. And Vince McMahon himself has even said that he doesn't know how he's earned a reputation as one who holds on to grudges, since almost everyone that he's ever had a problem with has eventually been welcomed back to WWE with open arms, at least for the most part. In his book Have a Nice Day, Mick Foley was rather critical about how Ric Flair was as a booker, in particular how he himself was booked by the Nature Boy in WCW. Flair responded by saying that he never viewed Foley as anything more than just a glorified stuntman. Now, the two would eventually come to blows on screen, as is what wrestling does, most notably at SummerSlam 2006 in an I Quit match, which was pretty heavy on the gore. Since then, the two are now said to be friends, having worked out their differences, and have even been reported to sit next to each other voluntarily on plane rides. And back to Ric Flair yet again. Anyone who knows backstage etiquette in professional wrestling knows that shaking hands is a big deal, and allegedly, Ric Flair claims that Bruno Sammartino refused to shake his. Supposedly, this had to do with comments made by Flair within his book. The Nature Boy had said that Bruno Sammartino was just a Northeast star and that he couldn't draw outside of New York. Bruno responded by saying that it was actually Flair who had snubbed him from the handshake and not the other way around, as well as saying that if you've seen one Ric Flair match, you've seen them all, and that he did not respect them. However, after that, both men would wind up becoming friends. And look, this video could very easily be turned into the Vince McMahon Ric Flair Power Hour, with both men having a lot of rivalries that they did eventually get over. But don't worry, this is going to be the last of these two for now, as it's time to get some fresh faces into this list. Now, on to another person who has a lot of rivalries with a lot of different people backstage, and that's Randy Orton. But for this particular entry, we're going to be focusing on his beef with Bubba Ray Dudley. Back during Randy's Evolution days, he had a tag team match against the Dudley Boys, in which both Bubba and Randy suffered injuries, which would land Orton on the shelf for several months. However, upon returning to WWE in 2015, Bubba said that him and Randy instantly shook hands and hugged. Then they sat down to talk for a few minutes, realizing that they had both overreacted to the situation and had since matured. And after that, Bubba Ray would even go so far as to heavily praise Randy for all of his work with Beth Phoenix in his feud with Edge. After the whole smashing the throne incident on AEW's Double or Nothing pay-per-view, a lot of people thought that there was a lot of heat between Cody and Triple H. But then, in late 2019, Cody said in an interview that while a lot of things got screwed up while he was in WWE, that if he was in a room with Triple H at that very moment, he would shake his hand and probably even hug it out. And also, currently, Cody has gone as far as saying that his favorite wrestler is probably... Cody Rhodes has said that his favorite wrestler is... Nope, can't say it, forget it. You know what? Let's just move on. Even though Jim Cornette continues to criticize Eric Bischoff to this very day over his decisions that he made in WCW, let's not forget that the two did meet on WWE's Table for Three, where they shook hands and bonded over a mutual hatred for one, Vince Russo. So as you can see, sometimes the best way to get over a rivalry is just to shift your hatred to somebody else. At the end of ECW's One Night Stand, many people do recall the shocking sight of seeing a battered and bloodied Blue Meanie. Now, this was caused by one JBL. According to Meanie, JBL was a bit of a backstage bully and he didn't particularly care for it, and that this led to Bradshaw delivering some stiff shots at the end of the pay-per-view. But no matter what really took place, the two men have been shown to now be friends. The exact origins of this rivalry aren't 100% known, but it has been reported that backstage, Batista wasn't the most liked guy on SmackDown at the time, and Booker was just one to verbalize it. The two of them decided to settle their differences like men, having a good old-fashioned fight. After this, Batista said that it was over and that they would agree to disagree and that they won't be friends, but they will have to work together. And Booker T said that they will never be friends, but they will work together in the ring like nothing ever happened. But even though both men said that they would never be friends, as it turns out, all these years later, they are now good friends, as the incident is now just considered water under the bridge. Well, there you go, the squashing of some real-life heat in professional wrestling, but what are some other reconciliations that you could think of? Let me know down in the comments, and yet again, please make sure that you're subscribed to this channel and that you give this video a big thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my Patreon supporters. And, as always, Dave knows.